Now, Dr. Anthony Fauci might think he's in the clear after his astounding Senate testimony last week. He pled the fifth over 100 times, and now he faces contempt of Congress charges. There will be a vote in the Senate this week, but that is only the beginning of his legal troubles. Before we get into the story, please like, share, and comment at the Becker Brief. We appreciate your support for common sense journalism. Now, Dr. Anthony Fauci is facing those contempt of Congress charges, and we'll have to see what comes of that. His pardon that he received from Joe Biden, well, it doesn't apply to any future crimes that might be committed. It's unclear why he even got a preemptive pardon to begin with. What he was guilty of doing, does that mean that he has a blanket pardon for anything he might have done, criminally speaking? He could have shot somebody in the streets and not even be held criminally accountable for it. But this hasn't even been tested in court, let alone the fact that it was signed by AutoPen and wasn't really Joe Biden. So that appears to be in violation of the Constitution under the Presence Clause. And so we have some major questions about Fauci and why he hasn't been held criminally accountable yet. Well, that could be coming because 3 states have now signed on to an effort to bring state-level charges against him, and therefore the federal pardon that was granted by the executive branch would not apply to these state-level charges. So we have the 3 states, and that's Florida, Louisiana, and Alabama. They're launching investigations into Fauci.
And they've now announced investigations into Dr. Fauci. Former President Joe Biden granted Fauci that pardon before he left the White House, but it didn't protect him from this. Here's Governor Ron DeSantis.
This is a guy that was drinking his own Kool-Aid. He was venerated by the media. I think he liked the fact that he had a lot of this informal power when he was issuing these recommendations and telling governors and mayors to do some of the draconian things that were actually done. It had a really negative effect on a lot of societies throughout this country. You had businesses reeling, people's liberties curtailed, and kids left on the sideline unable to access education.
One of the state AGs in Florida, his name is James Ootmeyer, he wrote that Fauci's lack of candor is unbelievable, and he said, my office is launching an investigation into Dr. Fauci. It's past time we get the truth of what happened during COVID. Well, I couldn't agree more. But after Wednesday morning's congressional hearing with the former NIAID director, Anthony Fauci, well, he declined to answer any questions, instead pleaded the Fifth Amendment. By some counts, 112 times. And Fauci's lack of candor, well, obviously that was unbelievable, but it's something that follows the track record, as we've been seeing through his so-called diary. He told the public one thing and said things privately that were much different on everything from fatality rates to masks to whether or not the shots stopped the spread to the wet market theory versus the lab leak theory. The inconsistency was just beyond the pale. And now these state-level charges, they would seem to obviate the presidential pardon, as it's being called. I think there's some question about whether it's actually a legal pardon. But these 3 state AGs, they are now all in, and they're pushing to bring charges. Now, this would not be the first time that Fauci has been brought into a legal case. In Missouri v. Biden, he was brought in to testify and found he wasn't credible on a lot of things, including the lab leak theory and his role in pressuring scientists to abandon the so-called conspiracy theory that it could have leaked from a lab. And so Louisiana, Florida, Alabama, they are starting to bring charges. And this comes on the heels of Senator Rand Paul obtaining and releasing over 1,000 pages from Fauci's pandemic-era documents. So Congress has questioned Fauci before, obviously, and he has been brought before courts before. But the heat, it is rising. And Fauci, he is being at least grilled over his role in the COVID pandemic response. I think it's been one of the most alarming things to witness. But the media is in full damage control, and they're trying to spin as hard as they can while trying to maintain distance from Fauci's comments. They aren't really digging into the details of why people are concerned about what Fauci said versus his policies. And one of the people who brought to bear some of these questions was RFK Jr., the Health and Human Services Secretary. And he got a clash with Dana Bash, who's mentioned in Fauci's files. She was a cheerleader for him and was scathing in her criticism of Republicans, including Donald Trump and his advisors, who dared to question the science of Anthony Fauci. And so RFK Jr. entered the lion's den of CNN on a Sunday morning, and he was looking for pelts. And the Health and Human Services Secretary unleashed a tirade worthy of his flame-throwing boss, an immediate takedown for the ages. And RFK Jr., well, he went after Bash, and this was something that really lit up the airwaves. Let's take a look.
Your job is telling the truth to the American people.
I see my job as telling the truth, and the truth is that there is study after study after study. It's one of the most studied things out there in science.
You're repeating
and it is
like a parrot. You're repeating it like a parrot. I've actually read the science. You don't want to come back here and debate the science.
I'm not debating this with you.
Of course you won't.
No, because I'm not debating.
All you know how to do is repeat things that people told you and say, trust the experts. That's what you did during COVID. Now we know that Anthony Fauci, who was the expert, was lying about everything, about masks, about social distancing, about natural immunity, about the transmission from the vaccine, about the source of COVID. He was lying, and you were punishing people for not trusting the experts. And now you're rolling out the experts again to talk about something that you have no personal knowledge of.
Okay, well, guess what? That is my job, to talk to people.
Your job is to tell the truth to the American public.
Yes, and my job is to get as much information as I can. And what we were doing,
skepticism,
what we were doing in COVID, and still, with regard to these vaccines, is getting the best information, the best science that we can.
So RFK Jr. ripped into CNN over scaring people, and he pointed out that was the job of CNN, and to put up the chyrons on how many people are dying to get people to believe a lie. So Kennedy bashed Bash over pushing the trust the experts narrative, and that obviously is something that backfired, because when Fauci became synonymous with the science and the experts, well, his flip-flopping and meandering and his deception was something that was a black eye for the entire medical establishment. So they would do well to disavow Dr. Anthony Fauci and hold him account for his dishonest portrayal of the so-called science. I mean, you can even go to the 6-foot rule. He said that this appeared as if out of thin air, and he did not challenge it. Just one of a number of things talking about mask recommendations. And it goes on and on and on, and we've documented it very well, and so have a lot of other people. But the medical establishment apparently felt like there was no moral reason to tell us the truth when the agenda was actually just to scare us into compliance. And it was based on lies at the end of the day. It did not stop the spread, all of these mitigation measures. You can argue about how much they did or didn't, but the data quite clearly speaks for itself. And, everything from 15 days to stop the spread. Even Deborah Birx, one of his cohorts in Silent Evasions, wrote that they were trying to extend the 15-day quarantine from the very beginning, so they knew that they were lying to us. We don't accept these lies. I don't know why this is hard for the mainstream media to believe. As a journalist, your job, your fidelity is to the truth. It's not pushing a socialist or radical agenda. It's not treating Americans like we're barn animals. We need to have informed consent, and that requires honesty, truthfulness, and transparency in what is going on, what is going into our bodies, so we can make informed and rational decisions about what is going on with us. And when you plunge us into fear-mongering and hysteria, well, that defeats the purpose of having a representative republic, and it leads to violations of rights, as we saw during the response. So weigh in with your thoughts about this story. Do you think that Fauci should go to prison? We always appreciate hearing from you at the Becker Brief.